Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are looking at the weekly metagame breakdown for the standard best of 3 traditional standard format. We're going to look at the best decks that can take you to Mythic rank and secure you a high finish on the MTG Arena ladder. So we're going to get the data from UntappedGG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, aggregates user win rates, gives us all the stats we're going to be looking at today. The link for Untapped, as well as each of these deck lists, can be found in the video description for your copy-paste needs. We will look at the popularity of decks, kind of the distribution of what decks are showing up the most on the ladder, and then the corresponding decks themselves. Notably this weekend we had RC Hartford, a US regional championship. It was won by Mono Red with Azorius Control finishing second. It did have a day 2 representation of 41% Izzet Prowess. It was in the 30% day 1, increased to about 41% day 2, so significant showing for Izzet Prowess in terms of volume played, and this is with obviously people kind of gunning for it in terms of it being the kind of go-to deck of the format. What we're seeing on Arena, it makes up about, from Diamond to Mythic rank, about 1 in 5, 20% of your games. Mono Black Midrange is up to about just a shade under 10. We have Dimir Midrange at 7, Mono Red at 6. Jeskai Oculus, Omni, Domain kind of all hanging around with Orzhov Pixie in the like mid 3s to 6 range. Overall. Looking at the data, we're going to look at 40,000 games of data played from May 13th through to May 20th. And now notably, Mono Red is the highest win rate deck. We are actually going to be focusing today on the version that won because it's a little bit more tailored to deal with an increase of Izzet Prowess. So this is pretty much just stock Mono Red. The only thing in here is like the Tursa Light Shatters over the Sunspine links. This seems very odd. Play full Sunspine links in this set. You just want to keep the stock list. But kind of looking at the list that won, and the notable card in the main board is Magebane Lizard. We're seeing 3 of it in the main board. So this here is a lizard, so it works both with Hired Claw as well as Rockface Village, and it really punishes folks for playing multiple non-creature spells. The Izzet Prowess deck wants to play multiple spells per turn. Well, in that case they're going to take quite a bit of damage to do so. They play 2 non-creatures in the same turn, they're taking 3 damage each turn cycle, and so it just kind of compounds the damage. It also dodges pretty much all the damage-based removal out of the Prowess deck. Torch the Tower dealing 3 if bargained, so it doesn't hit the Magebane Lizard either, which is nice. So we see 3 in the side, and then 1 more hanging out in the sideboard here. Otherwise, it's stock Mono Red. We're seeing Swiss Spears. We do see Scorching Shot as a 1-of here, and then just kind of your mouse package, your regular burn, kind of mixed into their 22 lands in the main. There's an additional land when you're boarding into Sunspine links for the greedier mana base decks. For bounce, any of the grindier matchups, you have Case of the Crimson Pulse. Filigree Silex as a Ratchet Bomb style effect for tokens, stuff of that nature. Scorching Shot again for bigger mana decks, things like Shieldred, stuff of that nature. Torch, cheap removal, Lithomantic Barrage, useful against like Oculus, white base decks. I think Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Hate. So we have that. Moving on, Izzet Prowess 69%. So this deck here, there's been a couple of variations. So notably, Draycatcher is very good in the mirror, and you'll see an additional copy of the Draycatcher in the sideboard. Some of the versions have trimmed completely off Monastery Swiss Spear. They've gone to Hearth Elemental. Some have tried the Big Crab instead, like the Flash Crab. So it's a couple different variations on how you can kind of configure, but it's usually this kind of combination. Into the Flood Mob, very helpful against a lot of the common hate pieces. High Noon, Temporary Lockdown gives you that value. You're seeing some varied numbers of Torch the Tower as well as Burst Lightning in the main board as well. And then your typical kind of draw package with stock up in here as well. Sideboard, Graveyard Hate, more cheap bounce, Spell Pierce is cheap disruption. Torch the Tower is cheap removal, unable to screen, can deal with things like Shieldred, kind of bigger things that might be hanging around. Braid for the mirrors, as well as just kind of catch-all removal with 3 damage. Disdainful Stroke for big mana decks, Pyroclasm for the mirror, the low to the ground decks, Growl for the grindier matchups, and then Wishstalker Frenzy as a 5 damage spell. Moving on, Jeskai Oculus. So this deck here, 69%. This is leveraging kind of a looting package, rummaging if you would, Tursa, Steamcore Scholar, draw discard, draw discard, draw discard of Fear of Missing Out, Glacial Dragon Hunt, Always taking advantage of the extra draw for Prophecy-Eidetic Memory to put a bunch of counters on your creature. Also lets you put cards into the graveyard. So ideally, Abhorrent Oculus can be recommissioned with both recommission or helping hand to kind of reanimate it and cheat or circumvent its pseudo escape cost of exiling cards from your graveyard. Winternight Stories works really nice, especially with things like Vigilance, where it lets you kind of draw, discard. You naturally want to put creatures into your graveyard, so it kind of churns through your deck at an above rate, and it's something you can also discard and take advantage of it from your graveyard. Sideboard, when they bring in a lot of graveyard hate, well, you can bring in Chandra Sparkhunter. Lets you attack on a different axis. Sheltered by Ghost as removal, very good against the red-based aggro decks. You can make big creatures that give them lifelink. Fireclasm is a cheap sweeper, negate for cheap counter versus like sweepers and stuff. Destroy Evil can deal with some of the graveyard hate, as well as Ghost Vacuum for dealing with your opponent's graveyards. Dimir Midrange, 60. We're going to give it 69 as well. So this is kind of the, hopefully you dodge Prowess and then you have game against the other decks. A bunch of cheap evasive creatures, Fairy Dream Thief, Spyglass Siren, Deep Cavern Bat, Flood Pits Drowner. That lets you take advantage of card draw from Enduring Curiosity or cheat into play a Kaido. Card draw, kind of life gain, swinginess with Sheoldred. Preacher kind of stonewalls the ground while providing you some card advantage. And a bunch of disruption, go for the throats, cut downs. Duress, Intimidation Tactics can also deal with creatures or artifacts, so hopefully hit that opponent's Quarry Steel before it resolves. On your sideboard, just more cheap removal, more hand hate, graveyard hate. You have some cheap removal encounters, Fairy Mastermind against like Beans decks, anything that's drawing a lot of cards. Filigree Salix for the tokens out of like Quarry Steel, another way to deal with like, this deck has like a hard time with dealing resolved artifacts, for example, so you can kind of bring it up over a couple turns, same with some of the bounce decks perhaps. Piracy Revenant for the aggressive decks, lifelinker that you can then put the lifelink that touch flying counters onto another creature once it dies. Tashana for activated abilities, Gix Command as a sweeper. Mono Black Midrange, 68%. So this is your Demons deck with a speed sub package. So you'll notice some Amonkhet Raceways as well as the Speed Demon for card advantage. Very similar to Dimir, you're not kind of ninjaing out or Curious Obsessioning with the Enduring Curiosity. Instead, you're using like Archfiend to draw with the Unholy Annex, gaining some life. Preachers in here, a lot of the kind of overlapping cards. In Cruel Colossus, Heist, Duress, and Intimidation Tactics, all ways to try to pick off Quarry Steel before it comes down. Withering Torment as kind of enchantment removal, as well as in the pinch creature removal. Liliana for the grindier matchups. Blot Out deals with big creatures, could deal with the results Kaido from your opponent's turn when they ninja it out since it doesn't target. Stonebrain for combo hate, Filigree Salix like we mentioned. More hand hate, graveyard hate, and a Edict effect. Orzhov Pixie, 67%. So a few different ways you can build this, but the core of it is kind of the bounce package with access to, sometimes you'll see temporary lockdown in the main. This one's actually opting to not play lockdown altogether. It's more of just like a blink version. We see Unyielding Gatekeeper as a blink effect. The scroll shift can reset stuff. You're picking up stuff, putting it down. Lauren in here, Veil Merc, as well as Mistmoors. So more of a scam deck with some pixie elements to it than the harder control version that is playing temporary lockdown, where you just kind of repeatedly bounce lockdown over and over again. Baloth when your opponent's playing discard. Leyline of the Void for graveyard decks. High Noon for prowess. Destroy Evil, big things, artifacts, or sorry, big things and enchantments. Grim Baubles, cheap removal, and Duress for hand hate. Domain, 65%. So this version here, basically green-white splashing Esper for Zur. You have your overlords that can be coming in. Shifting the curve down a bit, we have temporary lockdown as well as Elspeth Smite is more cheap removal. Still your Ride's End, which is your 2-mana removal spell in the deck, but trying to catch the little things early. Your sideboard, you have more Smites. Heritage Reclamation can deal with the artifacts and enchantments. Playing this over Paw Patch. High Noon for Storm decks. Negates, cheap counters. You do still have a Paw Patch, so just kind of flexible answers, just modular spells. Rest in Peace for graveyard hate. Obstinate Baloth for the discard decks. Elish Norn when your opponent's playing a lot of ETBs. Rakasha's Bargain plays really nicely with Beans. It's basically 3 mana for you to cast, but it triggers Beans in the same way. With Beans, it basically gives you access to 3 cards for 3 mana at instant speed, which is a good rate. Like super stock up. Atraxa for the grindier matchups, and Nissa for anything with a lot of enchantments, artifacts, kind of the mirror effects. Abzan Midrange Pixie value-ish at 63%. So you have your Pixie package, Kirin's, Pixies, your Momentum Breakers, nowhere to run, Hopeless Nightmare, but you have your Elves, some Mosswood Dread Knights in here, Baby Rhino, you have Blink with Fortune, Loyal Steed that can work, Debris Beetle can be blinked, Yathin as a way to kind of rebuy stuff from your graveyard. You mill them over, you get them into play for free, you can pick it up with Pixie, do it over and over again. Notably, this is a cast effect, not a blink effect, so you can't blink it for that value. You have to put it back into your hand and recast it and have it resolve in that case. Sideboard, Wiltleaf Liege for the discard decks. If your opponent's going to Hopeless Nightmare you, well, you get a free 4/4. Anthem, Tranquil Throwback, Artifact Enchantment, Graveyard Hate, Thoughtstalk Warlock, creature that can also hand hate your opponent. Lauren, Artifact Enchantment Hate, Gastral Raider. When this creature enters, reveals hands, choose instant or sorcery, so kind of an edict card or a discard card attached to a creature. You have Sheltered by Ghost as cheap removal for the red decks, just more removal, and then Haywire Might for Artifact Enchantment Hate. Azorius Control, 62%. So main boarding, Authority of the Consoles, Split Up, as well as Temporary Lockdown, 1 Day of Judgment. Win conditions in this deck, you have your Overlord and Meringue, some Jaces in here, Stock Up pulls the deck together with all your various spells. You have some Fountain Ports for utility, as well as Restless Anchorage in the mana base. So just kind of counters, removal, stick a big threat, kind of overwhelm. You also have some bases hiding out in here as well. But a lot of kind of cheap interaction to deal with the aggressive decks. Sideboard, you have access to Elspeth Smite for cheap removal, Change Equation for cheap counters, High Noon as anti-storm effects, so for like Prowess, anything multi-spelling, Omni combo, normalizes cheap counters, Graveyard Hate, Stonebrain for combo hate, Beza for the aggressive decks, Jace for the domain kind of mid-rangey decks when you mill them out, and Hopeless Nightmare has Wiltleaf, and then Overlord of the Bale Merc for kind of when you just need to shift up, have more of a threat density to your deck. We have Omni combo, so this one is doing, all the decks work in the same manner in terms of getting the combo started. It's how you win that differs. So they all care about putting Omniscience into your graveyard and reanimating it with a Well as Awakening. From there, this version is winning by basically looping 2 Meringue River regions, picking each other up over and over again and just kind of cycling, with the addition of Founding of the Third Path. So you're reading ahead to Chapter 2, and you're just going to mill your opponent out over time, each time milling them 4. Every time these dragons come into play, it would reset Whirling Dragonstorm, so you get to cast them again to just draw more cards in terms of your deck. Make the combo uncounterable through a Mistrise Village in the mana base. You have Mistmore, so you can kind of shift into like a mid-rangey control-ish deck if your opponent's bringing in a lot of kind of dedicated hate. You have Mistmore's, Beza's in here. Voice of Victory is basically playing the Grand Abolisher role from an speed interaction. You have Clarion Conquer that just deals with a bunch of activated ability effects. Day of Judgment is more sweepers, cheap counters, cheap removal. Cathar Commando can deal with basically all the common hate pieces for the deck. And then Spell Pierce is just more cheap disruption. Lastly, we have Naya Legends at 60%. So if I had to guess, what's his name? Oh my god, I played him in early access. Brian Kibler. He loves Annie Joins Up in these Naya piles. That would be my guess where it came from, but Annie Joins Up doubles the ETB effects of legendary creatures, any trigger from them, and then deals 5 damage on entering. Llanowar Elf ramps you early along with Hired Heirloom. You have some dragons on the top end in this one that Sarkin can also help you ramp. Lumbering World Wagon helps you ramp. Mura gives you some mana. When you expend, you get some value as well. So just a lot of ways kind of come ahead. The Twin Maw Stormbrood, while not legendary, is kind of removal in here. Bloodvine Regent as a way to kind of gain life with your dragons and help you ramp. Then you're doubling up on Dragonhawk triggers. I have no clue what Rift Liberated Prime Evil does. Other dragons get ward. It has ward at the beginning of your end step. If creature control dealt excess damage this turn, you create dragons. So basically just cheat out dragons. It's basically a Gruul splash white kind of dragon-esque deck. Itali for kind of the mid-range domain matchup. Season of Gathering, you could destroy all artifacts or enchantments, very strong. Vivian for those kind of mid-rangey matchups, gives you value, shoots down flyers, artifacts, or enchantments. Bonehorde Dracosaur, again, is a grindy element. Warren's most creature combat as well with first strike 5 power. Absence Bailoff for the discard decks, Graveyard Hate, Pyroclasmus, cheap counters, Paw Patch Formation as kind of some flexible removal. You might want to do the split like we saw with Domain, Paw Patch and Heritage Formation, just to give you a way to deal with artifacts since this doesn't hit artifacts. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.